From the very first breath you took on this earth, something subtle yet monumental was placed upon you. A name. It seemed simple, even sacred. It was whispered into your ears by loving voices, signed on certificates, woven into lullabies. But beneath the softness of that moment, something ancient and invisible occurred. A veil was drawn. You see, your name is not just a sound. It is a spell. It is a symbol carved into the illusion of permanence, a linguistic tether pulling you into the theater of identity. Before you ever knew the taste of language or the weight of thought, the world had already decided what to call you. And in doing so, it planted the first seed of disconnection from the infinite, from the nameless vastness that is your original state. You were folded into the architecture of separation and told it was unity. This is not about rebellion against your given name or a campaign to cast off labels. This is about awareness, deep, primal, and startlingly clear. It's about stepping outside the frame long enough to see the frame itself. For to be given a name is to be placed within a context, and that context, while practical, is also imprisoning. It defines boundaries before you even know you're bound. It tells you where you end and where the world begins. But what if you were never meant to end anywhere? They gave you a name the way one fences a wild field, erecting borders to claim ownership over something vast and free. The name was the beginning of domestication, the gentle introduction to the great forgetting. It tied you to a family, a culture, a system, and a story. You became a character in a play written long before you arrived, and like an actor who forgets they're performing, you began to believe the role. You were told you were this, not that. A boy or a girl. An achiever, a failure, a dreamer, a realist. You were handed masks, taught how to polish them, and rewarded for believing they were your face. And yet, if you've ever stared too long into your reflection and felt the edges blur, if you've ever questioned who is behind the voice narrating your life, then you've already felt the cracking of that name. You've already glimpsed the infinite beneath the costume. This idea that naming is a form of disconnection is not new. Ancient mystics, sages, and initiates have long warned that to know the self, one must go beyond language. In Eastern traditions, the true self is referred to as neti neti, not this, not that, an acknowledgement that anything we can name is not what we truly are. In the mysticism of the West, the divine name of God is often left unspoken, ineffable, beyond utterance. There is something sacred in the unnamed because it refuses to be confined. Consider the way children, before language crystallizes, seem to exist in a state of raw presence. They are not yet actors in the drama of identity. They are, simply and completely. Over time, the world encodes them. Words layer upon experience, and meaning calcifies. The name grows roots. But what was lost in that process? What knowing was traded for the illusion of knowledge? To be named is to be claimed. And yet, the soul resists ownership. It pulses like the tide, formless, endless, ever becoming. The true. You cannot be bound by phonetics or social contracts. It is older than the stars, as wide as the dream time, as silent as the spaces between your thoughts. It was never born and will never die. It has no label, no flag, no language, and no limits. It is awareness itself, watching, waiting, shimmering just behind the veil. And that is the paradox. The name you carry is not inherently wrong, but it is not enough. It is a map, not the territory. It is a window, not the sky. When used with awareness, it can serve. But when mistaken for the whole truth, it becomes a blindfold. The tragedy is not that we have names. It is that we forget they are temporary costumes on an eternal actor. The spiritual amnesia is not in being called something, but in believing that what you are can be captured in sound. This exploration is not an intellectual exercise. It is a remembering, a returning, a realignment with the unnamed frequency that animates all things. What lies ahead is not a rejection of your human identity, but a peeling back of its skin to reveal the living light underneath. This is your invitation to step outside of the identity that was handed to you, to loosen the grip of the name that became your prison, to return to that sacred, nameless self, the one that was watching before your first thought, and will remain long after your last. The naming of a thing has always been an act of power. In ancient cultures, to name something was to wield authority over it, to bind it in the net of language, to call it forth or seal it away. And so, in the earliest moments of your becoming, the same ritual was performed. A sound, a set of letters, a declaration of who you are, but made by others, not chosen, not intuited, but imposed. You were named, and from that moment, reality began to wrap itself around that vibration like a cloak. And with that cloak came a forgetting. One of the core themes hidden within this statement, they gave you a name to disconnect you from what you really are, is the illusion of identity versus the essence of being. The world is obsessed with names, labels, titles. It wants to classify, control, define. It wants to make the infinite into something it can touch. And so it builds boxes and calls them truths. But your essence cannot be put into any box. You are not your gender. You are not your job, your achievements, your traumas, or even your history. These are stories painted on your surface, and you are the canvas they rest upon. The illusion is deep, because the name comes to feel like a center. It is repeated until it echoes inside your thoughts, embedded so fully into your psyche that you no longer question it. When someone calls your name, you turn, automatically. That's me, you think. But is it? Or is it just the sound that's been stitched to your nervous system? What lies beneath that conditioned response? Another essential idea is the separation between the self and the persona. In Latin, persona means mask, a role played in the grand theater of life. Your name is the first mask. It allows you to move through the play, to interact, to be seen. But it is not the actor. The actor is hidden behind the eyes, behind the roles, behind the centuries of reincarnated memory that whisper through your intuition. To mistake the mask for the actor is to sleep in the costume closet of existence, thinking the garments are skin. There is a cosmic sleight of hand at work here. By placing the focus on the name, the title, the social self, you are distracted from the truth that your consciousness is uncontainable. This is the great diversion. Like a magician drawing your eyes to one hand while the other performs the trick, the naming of you pulls your attention outward, toward form, toward narrative, while your infinite nature waits silently within, untouched and unspoken. But this isn't about conspiracy or malevolence. It's about forgetting as part of the journey. The game of incarnation begins with amnesia for a reason. The fall into identity is the beginning of a great spiral inward. You become lost so that you may find. You forget so that remembering becomes sacred. The name becomes the starting point of the hero's journey, one you must eventually transcend if you are to awaken. To disconnect you from what you really are is not merely to give you a name, but to entangle you in meaning. The meaning of the name becomes a magnet. It gathers cultural expectations, parental projections, ancestral codes. You are taught to live up to it or rebel against it. But either way, the game is played on its terms. No one ever tells you that you can step off the board. But there is another theme here, subtle yet profound. The role of language as a spell. Every word you speak casts a vibration into the field. Names are no different. When someone says your name, they are invoking a spell that binds your energy to a role. And when you say it about yourself, you reinforce that contract. I am name is not just identification, it is invocation. But behind that statement, there is a deeper truth trying to break through. I am. The ancient mystics knew this. They left us clues. In Exodus, when Moses asked the divine, "Who shall I say sent me?" the answer came, I am that I am. Not a name, not a form, but a declaration of pure being. I am is the truth. Everything else is an accessory. This brings us to the deeper paradox. The name is not inherently evil. It is a tool, a signpost, a temporary symbol that allows you to move through the world. But it was never meant to define you. The problem is not in being named. It is in mistaking the name for your source. When the symbol becomes the substance, you lose the ability to feel what you are beyond language. There is also a quiet invitation in all of this. The invitation to begin unnaming yourself, gently, curiously. To peel back the layers and ask, who am I without this word? Who am I before the story begins? In the silence between identities, something ancient stirs, something unconditioned. It is not a concept or a thought. It is not a belief. It is awareness, naked and endless. And it has no name because it needs none. To see the world through that lens is to awaken from the spell. It is to remember that you were not created by the world's words. You entered the world with your own silence. The name they gave you helped you survive, helped you navigate, but it also helped you forget. Now is the time to remember. In the beginning, there was no name, only the shimmer of being, a soft vibration moving through the void like the first breath before language. There was no one to label the stars, yet they pulsed. No tongue had named the rivers, yet they flowed. Existence simply was, infinite, radiant, unobserved. But as soon as awareness turned in upon itself and said, I am this, the fracture was born. And from that fracture came the veil, the identity, the name. Let us begin with an ancient tale, one whispered in esoteric circles and carried through myth, though seldom understood in its full symbolism. It is the story of the soul who descended into matter. In the halls of eternity, where time does not yet tick and form has not yet congealed, The soul is a flame among flames, interwoven, indistinct, basking in the pure resonance of Source. It knows not itself as separate, for it is everything. But in that vast ocean of sameness, something stirs, a longing not born of lack, but of creative curiosity. The soul desires to know itself, and to do so, it must forget what it is, and so it descends. To enter the human realm, the soul must pass through the waters of Lethe, the river of forgetting. It is whispered that each soul drinks from these waters willingly, though the reason why is often buried beneath the weight of pain. And as the soul drinks, it sheds its infinite memory like skin and lands into form, fragile, blank, vulnerable. And then the first spell is cast. You are Sarah. You are David. You are Layla. You are Michael. A word, a vibration, a container. The soul looks around, newly conscious, and begins to believe. Yes, this must be me. The name becomes like a lock on the door of memory, not to imprison, but to initiate. For the descent is the beginning of the return. There's another story, less celestial, more terrestrial, yet it sings the same song. A young child is born in a quiet village, beneath skies that carry the weight of centuries. She laughs in frequencies not yet bound by language. Her eyes are wide, her spirit still echoing the realm she came from. But soon, the world arrives. Her name is spoken, over and over again. At first, it is musical, even magical, but slowly, it becomes weighted, with expectations, with culture, with rules. She is told who she is. She is told what to do. She is told how to behave. She learns that being herself brings disapproval, and being good brings love. So she crafts a self that is loved, a name that pleases, a mask that survives. Decades pass, and she forgets the taste of her own essence. Until one night, alone in silence, staring at the ceiling in a moment of stillness, something opens. A question, a presence, a crack in the mirror of identity. She says her name out loud, but it feels distant, like a coat that no longer fits. And in that space, the memory begins to return, not of events, but of being. She does not know what she is, but she knows it is not this name, not just this. This is not fiction. This is every soul's symbolic journey. Each one of us has walked through the valley of names, carrying the burden of sound and story. And in every mythology, in every spiritual path, the same theme recurs. You must go into the illusion to awaken from it. The name is your guide and your trap. It is the breadcrumb trail through the forest and the forest itself. Even in ancient spiritual traditions, there is reverence for the unspoken. The Tao Te Ching opens with the line, "The Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao." In Kabbalah, the innermost name of God, Yod-He Vav-He, is not to be pronounced, not because of fear, but because pronunciation turns infinity into sound. It collapses mystery into form, and the essence of the sacred is that it remains beyond grasp. This is the symbolic meaning of unnaming, not to rebel against words, but to soften your grip on them, not to throw away your name in anger, but to recognize it as temporary. The name is a garment you wear for a time, not the skin beneath. It is a page in the book, not the essence of the reader. And behind the name waits the unspeakable, your true self, still watching, still waiting. Think of the lotus. It grows from the mud, silent and unseen. It breaks the surface of the water, reaching for light. And when it blooms, it reveals a beauty untouched by the soil it rose from. Your soul is this lotus. The mud is the name, the identity, the world. The flowering is the moment you remember. I am not this. I never was. But I came here to play this. And in that realization, the name no longer imprisons. It becomes art. It becomes symbol. It becomes choice. The child, the flame, the myth, the mud. These are not just stories. They are maps, symbols that speak in the language of the soul. They point toward the quiet place inside you where no name has ever reached. And once you find that place, even for a breath, the spell begins to unravel. If the truth of what you are cannot be named, and your identity has been shaped more by constructs than by essence, then how does one live in this world of names without becoming lost in them? How do we walk among illusions without forgetting the real? This question is not philosophical indulgence. It is urgent, tangible, necessary. For what good is cosmic remembrance if it does not anchor into how you breathe, how you speak, how you love, and how you suffer? The journey of unnaming is not a call to retreat into some abstract ether. It's a sacred reorientation, a shift in how you relate to yourself and to everything around you. And it begins, quite simply, with awareness. Not the grand, lightning strike variety, but the soft awareness that creeps in like sunrise. Quiet, warm, undeniable. You begin to notice. You hear your name called, and instead of responding automatically, you pause. You feel a space between the sound and your sense of self. That pause becomes power. This space, this micro moment of detachment, is where the illusion begins to soften. You are not required to reject your name. You may still use it, honor it, even love it. But you no longer believe it. You no longer mistake it for the truth. It becomes a garment you wear to navigate this world, a necessary costume in a drama you've consciously chosen to participate in. You do not confuse the costume for the actor. That clarity changes everything. In practical terms, this clarity transforms your relationship with identity, achievement, failure, and even emotion. When you no longer define yourself by the name or the story attached to it, success is no longer an inflation of ego, nor is failure a death sentence to self-worth. Instead, they are both seen as waves upon the same ocean. They rise and fall, but they are not you. This disidentification from persona doesn't make you passive. It makes you sovereign. It also transforms your relationships. So much of human conflict arises from people defending their labels, their tribes, their stories. But when you are rooted in what you are before all that, you don't need to fight to protect an image. You're not afraid of being misunderstood because you no longer live to be defined. Instead, you begin to see others the same way you now see yourself, not as names, not as roles, but as living embodiments of the same infinite awareness, all wearing different masks for different lessons. Even the language you use begins to shift. You may find yourself speaking more deliberately, more spaciously. You no longer rush to say, "I am this," or "I always do that." Instead, you notice, you observe. You might begin to say things like, "Right now, I'm feeling," or "This thought is arising," because you know you are not the feeling, not the thought. You are the witness behind both. Language becomes a tool for clarity, not a trap for identity. And then there is the body, the greatest place of reconnection. For all the mind's games and the ego's labels, the body remains honest. When you become still, when you breathe without effort, you begin to feel it again. That nameless presence that moves beneath your skin like wind under water. This is where the spiritual returns to the physical. Your heartbeat is not just a function, it's a drumbeat of remembrance. Your breath is not just oxygen, it's a sacred rhythm that bridges the invisible and the visible. The real-world implications of this awakening are profound. The fear of death begins to fade, not because you deny mortality, but because you no longer see yourself as the name on the tombstone. What dies is the character. What remains is the light that played the role. With this insight, even grief becomes sacred. You mourn, yes, but from the place that knows nothing truly ends. This shift also brings strange freedom. You may find yourself releasing dreams that were never really yours, ambitions that were inherited rather than inspired. You begin to ask deeper questions before making decisions. Is this action coming from the persona or from the presence behind it? This simple inquiry can change your career, your relationships, your daily rituals. It doesn't demand perfection. It invites alignment. And alignment doesn't mean you renounce the world. It means you walk through it with eyes open. You no longer seek validation from the labels because you've already been seen by the only witness that matters, your own awakened awareness. You become like the silent sky behind the shifting clouds, present, steady, vast. In that space, the chaos of the world no longer controls you. It dances before you, and you choose how to respond. In a world obsessed with naming, branding, categorizing, and sorting, the act of remembering your nameless nature becomes a quiet revolution. You no longer play the game by their rules, not out of defiance, but out of truth. And that truth radiates through your actions, your words, your energy. It touches others without needing to teach or preach. It simply is, and that isness is contagious. You were never just the name they gave you. You are the witness behind the name, the silence before the word, the breath before the first cry. And when you live from that knowing, even in the small, quiet moments of life, washing dishes, sitting in traffic, holding someone's hand, there is a sacredness that returns. You are not escaping the world. You are finally meeting it as you truly are. And now we arrive at the quiet edge, the place where the journey curves inward once more, where thought begins to dissolve into stillness, and the narrative loosens its grip. If you've come this far, you are no longer merely reading, you are remembering. And that remembrance is not just intellectual, but cellular, ancestral, cosmic. It lives beneath your skin and between your breaths. You are not learning a new idea. You are uncovering an ancient truth you have always known. They gave you a name, but you are not that name. You never were. You are the field in which that name appeared. You are the silence in which that word echoed. You are the observer, the dreamer, the dream, and the awakening. And the gift of this realization is not just in knowing, it is in being. Being without the need to be defined. Being without the need to be understood. Being without the compulsion to perform a role that was never truly yours to begin with. And yet, paradoxically, this isn't about abandoning the role. You will still answer when someone calls your name. You will still use your story to navigate, to connect, to serve. But now, you do so with eyes wide open. Now, you wear your name the way the sky wears the clouds, present, visible, ever shifting, yet never touched at its core. You are not rejecting identity. You are transcending its illusion. You are reclaiming your essence as the one who plays with names, but is not bound by them. This is where transformation begins, not in the heavens, not in the afterlife, but here, in this body, in this moment, with this breath. The awakening is not some distant spiritual climax. It is in how you touch the world, now that you know you are not just of it. It's in how you listen to others, knowing their voice is a mask stretched over the same infinite that speaks through you. It's in how you forgive, because you see that their name, their wound, their mistake, none of it is who they truly are. Just as your own suffering was never the end of your story. There is a quiet nobility in walking through this world as one who remembers, not above others, not separate, but awake. You become a lighthouse in the fog, not by shouting truth, but by being it. Still, rooted, luminous. You begin to speak less and radiate more. You begin to need less and love more fully. The old games lose their grip. The old fears dissolve like morning mist. And in their place, peace. A peace not of passivity, but of presence. The peace of one who is no longer trying to be something they are not. You are not here to escape the illusion. You are here to see through it. You are not here to silence the ego, but to learn its shape so well that it can no longer mislead you. You are not here to deny the world, but to sanctify it, by bringing your full, unconditioned self into every moment, every conversation, every breath. That self, the one before the name, before the story, before the fall into identity, has never left you. It is not buried. It is not broken. It is simply waiting. Waiting for you to turn inward. Waiting for you to hear its whisper beneath the noise. Waiting for you to choose, not with panic, but with presence. And now you know. You have always had that choice. So go forward with your name if you wish. Let it serve you as a tool, as a bridge, as a poetic symbol in the great song of existence. But do not become it. Let your true self remain the silence that sings through the sound, the witness behind the scene, the light behind the mask. Because once you remember who you are beyond the name, the game changes. Not just for you, but for everyone you meet. They gave you a name, but now you give yourself back to what you truly are.